just like sex and fingernails. The black market eats up all your fails.
I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. Tom,
Yes.
what is the craziest music duo you've ever heard in your life?
There's a lot of them out there.
There's a lot of crazy duos out there.
Collaborations by artists that you wouldn't even think would put out an album together.
Right.
You've got Metallica and Lou Reed.
Right.
Is one of them that comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
We've even reviewed some others.
Jay-Z and Linkin Park.
Yeah.
I would never put those two together.
Yep.
Or I wouldn't put Linkin Park with really anybody. That's just me.
True.
Now today we're going to review an
Yes.
album that is an unlikely pairing.
Mm-hmm.
Elvis Costello and The Roots.
Yes.
Wise Up Ghost is the album. It's a collaborative album between hip-hop group Elvis Costello, hip-hop group The Roots, and English singer-songwriter legend Elvis Costello. Tom, you know a lot about both these artists.
Well, they're both artists that I really enjoy. They're
Yeah.
both artists that have a back catalog that's been as extensive as they are influential.
Right.
I mean, The Roots on the hip-hop side of things, going for, well over 20 years now even, and they're great. They're pioneers because they incorporate the real instruments into the hip-hop.
Very much so.
And it adds this bounce, and it adds this kind of like legit funk roots, no pun intended, pulling back from a lot of those influences from all the way from Motown to jazz, R&B.
Yeah, it has a very organic,
Yeah.
upbeat sound that you just can't help but nod your head to.
Yeah, and it's something
Right.
that they've been able to maintain for so long and still put out quality albums. I mean, geez, their last two albums, How I Got Over and Undone, are probably two of their best.
Right.
Really. And then Elvis Costello, he's been around since the late 70s on the kind of new wave / post-punk side of songwriting. Just some standout albums in the beginning of his career, like My Aim Is True, This Year's Model, and then his work with The Attractions, which is still kind of centered around him, but he's just put out so many killer albums. And that's what's interesting about a collaboration like this, is that you have two completely unrelated artists, but they're both so good that you can't help but want to listen to what they're going to make.
Right.
And really this collaboration kind of started because The Roots are the house band for the Jimmy Fallon show, and Elvis Costello had been on there a few times and played with the guys, and they just thought, let's take this.
Questlove and Elvis Costello kind of hit it off and somehow prompted this idea.
Yeah.
And it came to fruition with Wise Up Ghost. And honestly, when I listened to this the first time, Tom, you were the one who were like, what? Elvis Costello and The Roots?
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Yeah, no kidding.
And so when I put it on, I was like, I didn't know what to expect. I remember back in college, I bought My Aim Is True and listened to the shit out of that album. I loved it.
I remember that.
And so I was really kind of excited to see, and having reviewed a couple of albums by The Roots and listening to some of their back catalog, this is such an unlikely pairing. How is this going to turn out? And it actually makes a lot of sense. It's a very logical sound when you think about the backgrounds of both these artists. Elvis Costello's vocal parts are aggressive, cool. His lyrics are just really kind of driven. I mean, it makes you think about the song in a different light. And I always love it when lyrics are intriguing enough to me that it pulls me into the music a little bit deeper. That's the true value of good lyrics, I think, in music and songwriting. The Roots, they just kick ass and are undeniably cool throughout this album. And really, the only thing that's really similar about the only thing that these two artists have in common is that they're undeniably cool.
It's true.
Other than that, they're about as polar opposite as you can get.
But the sounds do work together, and I think it's because they were smart about how they approach this as a collaboration, because the instrumentals focus on The Roots and the vocals focus on Elvis Costello.
Yes.
And they're able to blend those two aspects pretty seamlessly, especially considering, The Roots are so damn talented. They're such talented musicians that while their forte is creating instrumentals for hip-hop, here they're able to transition into something a little different. Like I said, they still put some of that soul influence.
Right.
One artist I hear all over this record is The Meters. The Meters is one of my favorite artists, and especially like track 2, Sugar Won't Work, just has this groove that I feel like I'm listening to an early Meters record with Elvis Costello singing on top of it. So what helps is that truth, sticking to the sound, basically. Sticking to the style, hearkening back to something that we can all connect to, something that blends with the vocals. What also helps is that Elvis Costello's vocals sound as sharp as ever. His performance on this album makes it sound like he's still kicking it in the late 70s or early 80s. I mean, he has not lost his touch. So for two artists to come together like this and just stay on top of their game and collaborate sound-wise is really good. Now, a lot of praise there when it comes to the sound and the style. Moving from there to the songwriting is where I think this album takes a little bit of a hit.
I agree.
And there are some highlights on here, particularly I think the first 4 tracks are just killer openings. But then in the middle to end, you get some tracks that I feel just don't really cut it. Track 6, "Stick Out Your Tongue," doesn't really hold its weight.
Man, I don't like that track.
Yeah, it doesn't really carry it.
I also don't like "She Might Be a Grenade."
Yeah, that one was a little lame,
too. I just felt the keys kind of sounded really cheap.
I noticed that you didn't like Come the Mean Times that much. I actually liked that track quite a bit, but I wasn't too keen on Cinco Minutos con Vos, the Spanish track, 5 Minutes with You, or Viceroy's Row as much. So from there...
It ended nicely.
It did. It ended pretty well. I think that Wise Up Ghost, track 11, the title track...
It's a highlight track.
It is a highlight track, but it's a long track, and it probably would have worked better as the ending track.
I completely
As
agree.
the last track. And the last track, if I could believe, is actually a good song.
Yeah, it's not bad.
But it's just, it feels like it's tacked on at the end in kind of an awkward way that doesn't fit with the album flow they created in the tracks before it.
That's very true. I mean, just the fact that this thing sags so much in the middle kind of disrupts that album listening experience that you and I are always looking for. One thing that I did experience when listening to this album, I really did not like this at first, but the more I dug into it, I realized how the Roots were providing that sonic foundation, and then all of the cool things that Elvis Costello was doing with his vocals, his vocal parts, his lyrics. I just got into it a lot more. Also, Elvis Costello adds a lot, I think, when he adds his guitar to the mix, that crunchy guitar that he adds, I think really, on some of the tracks anyways, definitely is part of the highlight of the sound. Now, there were several tracks in here where they started mixing in saxophone, horns, sometimes strings. There's, I already mentioned track 8, She Might Be a Grenade, where there's a lot of like keys, and sometimes I feel like those other instruments didn't really stick to the template that they had made with the first 4 tracks, and that's why the first 4 tracks seem to be a lot stronger than the end. And I just feel like that they could have focused on that statement a little bit more. The other thing is that this album is a little bit needlessly long. This is a longer album. They could have trimmed this up. There's definitely some fat that could have been trimmed up, make it a more focused listening experience and a bit more groomed so that, it has a bit more fluidity to it.
And not only maybe cut a couple tracks out, but even trim some of the tracks down that they keep on there. Some of these get to the 5-minute range, and they don't necessarily need to.
No, they don't, because what they do is they take one idea and then repeat it over and over again, and they don't necessarily do it with any intention. It's just, they're jamming out, they don't know when to stop it. So it just kind of didn't feel like it was had that buffered polish that I wanted to hear when hearing this. But the cool sounds that with a lot of the good things that this pairing was doing, it's hard to deny it. And the more that you listen to it, the more I appreciated a lot of the highlight tracks. It's the track disparity, though, that really brings this down to me. What are you going to give this time?
I'm going 78.
I'm going to go 76, just slightly lower than you. What does that make this? It makes it a 77 from Velocities in Music.
Not the first one.
No, not the first, because that's the tip of our bell curve. And after reviewing 670, almost 680 albums now, I mean, we have a serious bell curve, and the tip is at 77. So, what you guys should know from that is that means this is a pretty solid album. You guys should check this out. It didn't blow us away. It's not the best album we've heard in 2013, but it's definitely something we would recommend to you guys, and you guys might actually really enjoy this more so than Tom or I. We'd love to hear your feedback. Please listen to this and leave us a comment at www.velocitiesinmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesinmusic. As always, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and make sure to just leave us a comment letting us know what albums from 2013 you'd like to hear or see us review. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.
Wake me up, wake me up, wake me up, wake me up, wake me up.